Hello, and welcome to Kerbal tutorial for rovers, skycranes, and setting your rover down on a body in space. I've seen this question come up a lot on various aspects of Reddit, on the forums, and essentially what people have been telling me is that they know how to build a rover, they know how to launch a spacecraft, they don't understand how to put the rover on the spacecraft without tipping it over, and they don't understand how to land the rover on a body without blowing it up. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I've already built a rover, so we don't have to sit and watch me put the parts on, but I do want to go over some of the important elements so that you can make sure that your design is going to work. This is an unmanned rover. You could easily throw a command seat on here, and it would not be an issue. This is unmanned, though, because it's going to make our job a little bit easier. And when you're testing something, particularly in career mode, it is much better to do it unmanned than manned for your very first time. No one dies. Right. So, the important elements to talk about with this design are the photo panels are obviously angled in such a way that when they're expanded, they're not going to, it's going to be bad. They will pop up, but it's like, when they expand, they are not going to interfere with the rover itself. They're going to be clear of it. There won't be any part clipping. I have two probe cores on here. The first probe core, this one here, is going to be used for the ascent and for takeoff. And the second probe core, this one here, is going to be used to drive it. And you see I've angled it sideways. There's actually a little cubic octagonal structure that's kind of hidden in there to allow me to do that. Now it's going to be back. Do that. The way I do that is like this. So I set it up like that, and then I'm just going to bring it down. That does clip it a little bit. I mean, you could technically say that this is kind of cheating, but for my money, it's not, because it helps me align. Because if I was running a real space agency, I would be able to attach that piece there without having to cheat like this. The other important thing is RCS on it. There are 4 thruster blocks. This one's going to Mimis. And when I'm launching a ship to Mimis, a rover, or actually to anybody, I like to have RCS on it so I have some steerability during descent, and I also like to do that because it's going to give me a option to fire the brakes off by holding hard on my shift or fire backwards. And that will help me to either speed up or slow down, depending on which way I fire the RCS blocks. The tank board is underneath along with the battery packs. These are on the bottom to help bring the center of mass down. If we look at our center of mass indicator, we can see it's actually beneath the structural panel that it's built on. And that helps to lower center of mass, which makes the vehicle much more stable when driving it. Tesla actually does this thing. By putting their battery packs on the bottom, it stabilizes their vehicles. I use RCS fuel because we're going to Mimis. There's no need to add any other fuel. If I was putting this on the Mun or Duna or something, I would actually go like this. Or if I was building a larger rover, say sometimes I build them with 4 of these panels instead of just 2. Instead of just the 1 2x2, I'd put 4 of them together to make a large rover. But if I were to do this on another body with higher gravity than Mimis to put it down, I would put the 2 orange tanks and the spark engine, and that provides us with a ton of delta V, just to give us more stability during landing, and to allow us to dock with a ship if we ever need to. Now, on top of the vehicle, I will put the Clampatron Jr. docking port, so that I can attach myself to the rest of my launch vehicle. But for this version here, we don't need the RCS is going to be more than enough, because you can actually take off. You can bring this rover to orbit on Mimis just using RCS. Alright, other than that, I don't think there's much to explain. The tires are all attached. I use this method. I've seen other people do it other ways, but I basically drag them along the bottom and then flip them up at the last second. And as soon as they flip, I let them go. And that just helps me to align them because it can be a pain to make sure they're all aligned perfectly. So from here, attaching the rest of the Skycrane. The Skycrane is the device we're going to use to lower it. It's modeled off of how NASA launches their Curiosity rovers. So the next thing I need to do is select another, how NASA lands their Curiosity rovers. Select another junior docking port. I gotta flip it around. And we're gonna start with these two pieces docked together. And I'm gonna assign those to an action group. Action group 9, in this case, will be to decouple the nodes. And the reason I do that is it helps me to make sure that when I'm landing the vehicle, I'm not going to be stuck trying to fiddle with it to make it line up perfectly. That's just going to do the job for me. Throw on a fuel tank to power the landing mechanism. You want to use one that is, sorry, there we go. Alright, you want to use the one of the larger fuel tanks for this. You don't have to use the biggest one because this is a smaller rover. But you can see from above that it basically covers the entire body of the rover, and that's just going to mean we don't have to extend our engines out too far. So now I'm going to grab the structural panels. I'm going to do 3 of these, and I'm going to turn on angle snap. And the reason for that is that it will let me make sure that it just helps line it up a little bit better in this case. Because if I turn angle snap off, then like, to me, like, I could put them on there like this if angle snap is off, if I have symmetry snap on, and they just, it doesn't look right to me. Like, I don't know. I think it just looks better with angle snap. That's the reason I do it. Then I'm going to put on my Twitch engines, 3 of them, and this is more than enough power for us to land on Mimis. I've already done the math for it, but I do use my Kerbal Engineer Redux just to calculate the thruster weight, the delta V, and everything for each body. And we want to kind of overdo it a little bit with the Skycrane, because you want to make sure that it has enough delta V left after dropping the rover that it can take off and not crash land on top of it. We have to throw a battery back on here. Come on, there. We don't want to run out of batteries in the Skycrane either. You don't have to use the biggest ones, but since I have everything unlocked, why not? Alright, and then we put the probe core on top. The probe core is really necessary. It doesn't matter which one you choose, but it has to have SAS capabilities, because you have to make sure that when you decouple the docking port, the Skycrane is going to have be predisposed to spin out of control, and the SAS is going to help make sure that it launches straight up instead of flying down and smashing into a rover and destroying the vehicle. Alright, so this is our basic Skycrane design, and the only thing we have to do now is add the struts. Something I did not realize when I started playing, until pretty far along, is that you can actually put struts across parts which are going to decouple. In this case, from the structural panel up to the fuel tank. And when I break the Clampatron docking port, when I snap that apart, it is going to also break the strut connectors. You don't have to worry that your struts are going to keep these together. I actually thought when I started playing that the struts would not snap with the docking port, but actually when we separate them, they'll pop off just like that. Great. So now this vehicle is stable. It is going to be fully capable of performing a landing. Let's put it in a better spot. I am trying to make sure that my engines are clear of the tires. That's going to be perfect. Alright, so now to add the launch vehicle. The way I'm going to do this is by using a stack separator that's the same size as my fuel tank down here. The other, yeah. And then we're going to come over and put on module grid detacher adapter. And this is just going to help pull us down a little bit so that we can finally get to putting the rocket in place. And then we want to put a structural 2x2 structural panel, just like the one the rover was built on, down here. And I'm going to strut these together to make sure that our rover is not going to go flying off my vehicle during launch. Great. So now we have a very secure rover. It's not going to tilt, it's not going to flip in any way. I can add on my fairing. Anything else? I always seem to have trouble with the fairings. I've heard that in the new version they are greatly improved. I hope that's true. I said before, I'm not a Steam user, so I don't have access to the newest version yet. And now this is safely wrapped up. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to hurt anything. It's good to go. The only other thing I would show you is that if you were to launch this to an orbital body like Luna or anywhere else, you would want to just make sure that you put the heat shields on it. And I would actually probably suggest using the largest heat shield you have access to and attaching it top, and then you're basically going to have to flip the vehicle over when you are landing. The other option, if you are worried about this, or if you build a really large rover, is to go like this. And actually just put more than one heat shield on here. And now that's going to basically shield the whole vehicle. This is a little bit of overkill. It is not necessary to pair it off like this, and then you would obviously just attach the parachute if you were going to put it down on a body that required that. We are not doing that here because we're launching the Mimis. Just wanted to show you how you put the heat shield on. And obviously, if you were to do that, you would be required to use a larger fairing to enclose everything, but for our sake, it's not necessary. Now, I've actually already built this rover with the rocket, and I just want to show it to you really quick before we launch it off, so you can see the whole thing. There we are. So, our rover is encapsulated nicely inside. It's got the strut connectors. Everything is fired off beautifully. And we're not going to launch this because I already put the ship in orbit around Mimis. Just to save time so you're not stuck watching me fly to Mimis for 10 minutes or so. There is one mod that I'm using that makes this process a little bit easier, and that's the joint reinforcement mod. It is not 100% necessary to use, but what that basically does is improve the physics alters the physics and alters some of the parts to make it so that your joints stick together quite nicely, so that you're not stuck flying in wet noodle, as I have heard it described. And we're just going to warp around a little bit so that we can get into the sunlight, and then I will show you how we do the last part of this mission. Alright, let's cancel that warp. Now we will see our craft. So there is our rover, with the Skycrane above it, and then the rocket that carried us over to Mimis. Mimis is the best place to do any of these sorts of missions because it is the it's the planet that has the least gravity, the moon, it's not a planet, it has the least gravity, It has the most appropriate landing spaces for testing out rovers, bases, anything like that. This is a place to test them because these ice fields here, the Great Flats, are basically perfectly flat, and they're large enough to easily land on. So we actually have a sample rover I already landed. We're going to try to set ourselves down pretty close to it. The other nice thing about Mimis is that you can fly really low to the ground, so that I can make sure I know, so I can control exactly where I land pretty well. So I'm just going to pull this in and get us so that we're on a trajectory to land more or less where I want to, which is somewhere in this icy flat. Alright, let us warp on over. Yeah, you can actually, Mimis, the gravity is so small that you can do this without using the map mode. But we don't need to do that. We could, no, we're not going to try to land right on it. It's another time. You don't want to sit and watch me miss my landing. So we are about to decouple the rest of the launch vehicle, and then we only have the Skycrane and the Rover. Manley has a really interesting video on launching rovers to space, where he talks through 3 different ways of doing this, that I highly recommend if you are interested in some other techniques. I recommend all his videos, because he's really cool. Alright, so I'm going to decouple that stage, and we are going to switch to full Skycrane mode. I want you to notice that when I decouple it, these strut connectors will just fly off normal. There won't be any problems with them. So I'm just going to use the RCS to boost away from it, so that we're not on the exact same trajectory. And let's warp down here. Alright, so now we are going to be in our final descent to Mimis. Let me activate those engines and rotate us. And we want to switch to surface on any landing, to surface velocity. You probably know that if you're already at the point of watching this video, but it's good to go over this real basic. Once again, I do use the Kerbal engineering redux to help me get some of the statistics for my flight. The most helpful one right now is that by clicking on the surface, it gives me my altitude, my vertical, horizontal speeds. It helps me know my impact time, which gives me an estimate on what the situation is going to be with our landing. So we're going to warp on down and get us much closer, because we don't want to be stuck watching this forever. Now that we are pretty close to landing, we're just going to bring that surface up. Make sure that it's directly over the very top of our nav bar. So we're more or less flying straight down, and we have killed off our surface velocity. That's how I want to describe that. We're killing the surface velocity. Now we'll just time warp on down pretty close to the surface. So this maneuver here I'll talk about for a second. Once we get down to the surface, we want to fire the rocket to full throttle and then decouple. And the reason we're going to fire to full throttle and decouple is that it's going to make sure that the Skycrane, once we've decoupled, shoots off in the other direction and doesn't come falling down on top of us. We also want to really kill our velocity almost to 0, because these wheels cannot take the same kind of punch that our landing gear could. Some of the landing gear can probably land at about 20 meters per second and be fine. These wheels probably have to be closer to 3 or 4. And I want to turn on my brakes by clicking up here. That's just going to make sure that these wheels stop spinning. And this one seems to have a mind of its own. You can also do this manually if you want to. Alright, so we are about to land. We are a few hundred feet above the surface. There's our shadow, which is actually the way I normally navigate these. If I don't have my Kerbal engineering, then I would use my shadow to tell me how close we are. I'm just going to kill that velocity. Now we can boost. Not boost, time warp. We'll be touching down in 19 seconds or so. We're going to really let this get pretty close to ground level before we decouple it. If you're really nervous, you can actually land the vehicle and then boost the Skycrane off, but it's, I think, a lot more fun to drop it. So we're going to be detaching in just a second. I like to try to be under 30 meters altitude. The other nice thing about these flats here is that in addition to being perfectly flat, and we are decoupling the Rover. I throw the flap up to full speed so that the Skycrane shoots off safely, and I can actually track it from up here. You can see it is flying directly over the Rover, so if I want to, I'm just going to tip it a little bit so that it's not going to crash directly on me. And the game is not letting me switch because it's about to crash, so we will just warp to the crash. Okay, there we go. Alright, and our Rover is officially landed. Safe and sound. We can turn on the lights. We can open the solar panels. And we are good to go. This thing is going to steer beautifully. As I said, it has enough RCS capabilities actually to launch because it's on Mimus. So that if you were more nervous and wanted to set it down earlier, you could steer the last bit from here. And then we should have this nice probe cord that I showed in the beginning of the video, and what that's going to let us do, if we click on it and click control from here, we'll shift our nav bar so that we're looking at the horizon and we can see exactly where we're driving. Turn off RCS before I start driving. And turn off the brakes. And now we should be moving forward. Yep. We are officially driving our Rover on the surface of Nimitz. That's awesome. There's actually a wreck 22.6 kilometers away of my first attempt to do this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Ben the Kerbal Man. This is my second video post. I have a microphone coming in, so I know the audio quality has been perfect. Hopefully that will make a big difference with that. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you have any requests, comments, or questions, please send them along. Yep, thank you so much, and I will be back soon with another tutorial video.